Got a very special guest for you. It's author William Dalrymple, who has released his new book, The Anarchy. Hey there, thank you so much for joining us in the studios.
Hello.
He joins us from Mumbai. Just to tell our viewers a little bit about it now, The Anarchy, which chronicles the journey of East India Company's setting up of British rule in India. All of his 8 books have won literary prizes published by Bloomsbury India. The new book gives us an insight into the first global corporate to conquer a whole subcontinent, thus colonizing India much before the British Empire ruled the country. Now, the author joins us now for an exclusive chat. Let me just go straight to William. Firstly, I want to understand.
Hi, Sonal, how are you?
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
I said, how are you? Good morning.
I'm very well. I'm feeling very pink today, as you can see. Thank you so much for joining us on Good Morning India. I just first and foremost wanted to ask you, what's gotten you so interested in this subject?
Well, I've always been interested in how people talk about the British conquering India, whether in London or in Delhi. People forget the fact that it wasn't the British any more than Google is the Americans. It was a corporation. It was the East India Company. It had a headquarters in the city of London, a tiny office, only 5 windows wide. And it wasn't, done out of Downing Street by the British government. It was much more sinister than that. It was done by one corporate entity sitting in one small office in the city of London.
Yeah, and it's interesting how you talk about the East India Company as a business house that eventually became, a colonizing force, so to say. Do you really think that the company could have simply remained a trading company?
Yes, it could have. I mean, it developed an army by 1800 that was literally twice the size of the British army. In 1799, the British had about 100,000 people in their army, while the East India Company, by borrowing money from Indian financiers like the Jagat Seths and the big Hindu banking houses in Benares, trained up an army of 200,000, 2 lakh Indian troops, the sepoys. Which was the largest modern army in Asia, and it was like an empire within an empire. It was the company and the company directors, answerable only to their shareholders, who conquered India. And it's the most improbable story, because when the company is founded in 1599, Britain is only producing about 1.7% of world GDP, while India, then the Mughal Empire, which means not just modern India but modern Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Afghanistan, makes about 38% of world GDP. It's just overtaken China for the first time as the world's greatest and largest and richest industrial producer. Indian textiles were the best in the world.
And you do know a lot has been written about this subject by very well-known politicians in the country as well. Did you manage to see what Shashi Tharoor had to say on the subject? What are your views on it?
No, Shashi and I are old friends, and long before he did his Oxford debate, we debated together on the same side at the Supreme Court in London about the iniquities of empire. So we're very much on the same team.
And also in your book, you talk about a lot in detail about Tipu Sultan. Tell us about what your really views are on him.
Well, Tipu is a complicated character, and I think there's always this problem in India where everyone wants people to be either angelic angels with halos and wings floating in the air, perfect national heroes, or villains with horns and cloven feet and tails. And Tipu, like most human beings, was neither. He was an extremely efficient administrator. He was very innovative. Seeing what the company had done, he set up a straight trading company and started making factories and settlements in the Gulf. He wanted to expel. He was the only Indian ruler who never made a treaty with the East India Company. He remained completely dead set to expel them from India. He twice, if not 3 times, I think, hugely defeated the company in battle. And he was a generous ruler to the Hindus in his state. You can still go around Karnataka and see the Padshah lingams that he gave to the temples within his state, and most of his administration was Hindu run. But I think he's got the bad reputation he has in many parts of India because he was a savage enemy in war. Even by the standards of the time, he was incredibly brutal to those he attacked and defeated. And he mass converted the Syrian Christians of Malabar.
All sounds very, very fascinating and can't wait to finish the book. But let me just, before we end this, put you in a spot by asking you a list of some of the features of modern Indian economy, since we're talking so much about it these days, that draws actually its roots from the days of the company. Do you have some parallels over there?
Well, I think the first thing to say is that, you know, the company was the very first multinational to invent corporate lobbying, the sort of thing that we have today when a powerful company, whether in America or in India or in Britain, wants to influence politicians. The company had that down to pat, and 40% of politicians in Parliament eventually had shares in East India companies, so they did all they could to protect the company and aid it. But they also invented corporate bribery, and we all know the kind of shenanigans that go on during elections in this country and elsewhere with large corporate donations being given to political parties in return for we know not what unwritten favours which they expect in return. And that, of course, is in a sense how democracy works. And it's not just, you know, the Congress or BJP here, it's equally the Democrats and Republicans in Washington. And that, in a sense, is one of the less attractive legacies. But the big legacy, I suppose, is United India. Because, you know, if you, while India was a geographical, spiritual and cultural unit for millennia, neither Ashoka, nor the Guptas, nor the Sultans, nor the Mughals ever united it into one enormous political unit. And what did that, actually, was the East India Company.